You start at the bottom. Everyone does. There's no other way into this world, no shortcut that bypasses the foundation, no amount of prior experience that lets you skip the part where you prove yourself to people who have seen everything and are impressed by nothing. You come in as a candidate, and as a candidate, you are nobody. You are potential at best, a liability at worst, and the team you're trying to join will not know which one you are until you show them, repeatedly, under conditions designed to find the answer whether you want them to or not. The selection process is not a test in the way a written exam is a test. There is no single score, no pass or fail line drawn in advance that you can calibrate your effort against. It is an extended observation. Weeks of physical and psychological pressure applied consistently, while people who say very little watch everything you do. How you perform when you're exhausted. How you treat the candidates around you when you're competing against them. Whether you quit on yourself, and if so, at what point and under what conditions. Whether you can be coached, whether you listen, whether the feedback you receive changes your behavior or disappears into the same patterns you walked in with. They are not looking for the strongest candidate. They are looking for the right one. Those are different things, and learning that difference is the first real lesson. The physical standards are what civilians imagine the job is. You run until your lungs are burning, and then you run more. You carry weight that seems unreasonable until you understand why it exists, and then it seems necessary, and then after enough time, it just feels normal. You do obstacle courses in full gear in weather that doesn't care about your comfort. You swim in full kit because the water doesn't know you weren't expecting it. You shoot thousands of rounds from every position, standing, kneeling, prone, moving, under time pressure, with one hand, in the dark. Your groups tighten. Your times come down. Your hands stop shaking, not because you become fearless, but because you become familiar, and familiarity is what discipline is built on. But the physical part is the smaller part. The part that matters more is what happens in your head when the physical part is trying to take you apart. The instructors know what exhaustion does to decision-making. They know what stress does to communication. They know that a person who looks excellent on paper in a gym on a Tuesday morning is not the same person who exists at hour 14 of a call-out with no sleep and bad information and a situation that keeps changing in ways the original plan didn't account for. They want to see that person, the one at hour 14. Everything before that is just warm-up. You make it through selection. You are now the newest member of the team, which means you are the most junior member of the team, which means you understand your role completely, and your role is to do everything asked of you with a speed and completeness that leaves no room for anyone to question your commitment to being here. You ask questions when questions are appropriate, and you stay quiet when they are not, and you learn the difference fast. The senior operators around you have years in this work. They have been on calls that shape the way they move through doorways. They carry knowledge in their bodies that you will only acquire through time, and there is no substitute for time, and you accept this about your situation without resentment, because resentment is expensive and you cannot afford it. Your first role on the team is as an entry operator. This is where everyone starts operationally. The entry team goes through the door first. That sentence, stated plainly, contains the entire reality of what you have signed up for. You go first. Whatever is on the other side of that door, you meet it before anyone else does. The training that preceded this moment was designed to increase the likelihood that you survive meeting it, but it was not designed to eliminate that possibility, because nothing eliminates that possibility, and anyone who told you otherwise was selling you something. Entry work is built on speed, surprise, and violence of action. Those three things in that order. Speed, because a threat that cannot track your movement cannot effectively engage it. Surprise, because the moment between a subject's recognition of your presence and his ability to respond to it is the window you operate in. Violence of action, because hesitation in that window costs lives and decisiveness saves them. And the discipline to be decisive in those fractions of a second is what the thousands of hours of training were building toward all along. You don't think in the stack, you react. Thinking is for the planning phase. Inside the threshold, it is all training, all reflex, all the accumulated repetition expressing itself without your conscious mind having to authorize each step. You learn to move with your team the way a single organism moves. The stack outside the door is a unit that breathes together. The entry is a choreography rehearsed so many times that it becomes instinct, and instinct is faster than thought, and fast is the thing you need to be. You learn the geometry of rooms. You know without measuring where the fatal funnel begins and ends, where the angles of fire intersect, where the corners are and what they mean. You learn to clear a room in sequence with a partner without speaking, communicating entirely through movement and position, through the knowledge of where the other person is going, because you have done this 1,000 times, and you know without looking. The call-outs accumulate: barricaded subjects, hostage situations, high-risk warrant service, active threats in buildings that normal patrol units cannot safely approach. Each one is different in its specifics and similar in its structure. The activation, the mobilization, the briefing, the staging, the wait, which is often the hardest part, and then the execution, which is over faster than you can fully process while it's happening, and then the debrief, which is where the real learning happens. The debrief is merciless. Nothing is spared. Every decision is examined. Every movement is questioned. Every second of the operation is accounted for and measured against what the team knew at the time and what they could have done differently. You come out of debriefs better than you went in. That is the point of them. That is the only point. You absorb enough call-outs and enough training cycles that you begin to develop instincts that cannot be taught directly. You develop a read on situations that comes from pattern recognition built up over years of exposure. You walk into a staging area and you understand the problem faster than you can explain how you understand it. You look at a building and you see it the way a chess player sees a board, not square by square, but as a whole system of relationships and threats and possibilities. This is not mystical. It is the product of repetition applied to attention over time. Everyone on the team develops this. It just takes time to build, and you cannot hurry it. You earn your way into more specialized roles within the team. You cross-train on less lethal options because the job is not only about the hardest available force, it is about the right available force, and those are frequently different things. You learn the psychology of de-escalation not as a replacement for your tactical skills, but as an additional tool in a kit that gets more comprehensive the longer you stay in this work. You start to understand that the most successful operations are often the ones that end without the entry team going through the door at all, because the subject came out, because someone said the right thing in the right way at the right moment, because patience and communication achieved in an hour what force would have achieved in a second, but at a cost that patience and communication didn't carry. You file that understanding. You add it to everything else. Time passes. You accumulate the thing that cannot be rushed. Your junior status fades. New candidates come through selection and join the team, and you are now one of the people they watch and learn from, one of the people whose movement patterns they study, whose decisions under pressure they try to understand and internalize. You carry this with a specific kind of seriousness because you remember what it was like to be in that position, and you know how much it mattered to watch people who had already figured out what you were still working on. You owe it to the people behind you to be worth watching. You take that seriously every day. The transition to team leader is not an appointment. It is a recognition, something that the people around you and the people above you perceive before. It is formalized. Leadership on a tactical team is not positional in the way that rank is positional in a conventional hierarchy. It is earned specifically through the quality of decisions made under pressure, observed over time by people who understand what good decisions under pressure look like because they have been making them themselves. When the team leader role comes to you, it comes because the team already trusts you with their lives in the worst possible moments, and making it official is almost a formality. Leading the entry team changes the nature of your attention. As an operator, your focus is outward and immediate: the door, the room, the threat, the next move. As a team leader, your focus expands to hold the entire operation simultaneously. You are responsible for the people behind you, as well as the problem in front of you. You carry the plan, and you carry the contingencies for when the plan meets reality and reality changes it. You make decisions that affect not just your own survival, but the survival of people who trust that decision. And that trust is not abstract. It is tangible and constant, and it weighs something real. You learn to brief with a precision that leaves no room for misunderstanding. Your plans account for what you know and clearly identify what you don't. You build in flexibility because rigid plans that cannot absorb change are not plans. They are wishes. You communicate expectations with a clarity that comes from understanding exactly what you need from each person on the team and why. Because people execute better when they understand purpose, and purpose is your responsibility to provide. You make decisions faster than feels comfortable because the alternative is paralysis, and you have learned through hard experience that a good decision made now is almost always better than a perfect decision made too late. The hardest call-outs as a team leader are the ones where the situation changes after the team is in motion. Where new information arrives that invalidates the plan you just briefed. Where you have to make an adjustment in real time with incomplete information while your team is already committed and looking to you for direction. These are the moments that separate team leaders from people who happen to get promoted, and you understand this, and you train for it specifically, running scenarios that are designed to break down and then watching what decisions emerge from the breakdown. There are call-outs that stay with you, not the ones that went perfectly. Those are satisfying, but they don't live in you the way the difficult ones do. The ones that stay are the ones where something didn't go according to plan, where a decision you made had consequences you couldn't fully anticipate, where you had to balance the safety of your team against the life of a subject who was a danger to himself and others, where the right answer was not available, and the least wrong answer was the best you could find in the seconds you had. You carry those. You examine them in the early morning hours. You take them back to the debrief even after the official debrief is closed. You let them make you better, because the only use of a difficult moment is the lesson it contains. Years into the team leader role, your understanding of the work has expanded far beyond the tactical. You understand the political environment your team operates in, the relationships with the command staff and the other units, and the district attorney's office and the courts. You understand that every use of force your team makes will be scrutinized, that every decision will be examined in daylight with full information by people who were not there and did not have to make it in the dark with partial information and fractions of a second. You train your team with this understanding present, not to make them hesitant, because hesitation costs lives, but to make them deliberate, because deliberateness is the thing that holds up to scrutiny because it was right in the first place. The tactical commander role is a different kind of responsibility than team leader, and not a smaller one. As tactical commander, you are no longer primarily in the field with your team. You are running the operation from a command post, managing information flow, coordinating resources, making decisions at the operational level, while your team leaders manage execution at the tactical level. The distance from the action does not make the job easier. It makes it harder in specific ways that you had to learn. When you were in the stack, you had direct sensory input. You could see, hear, and feel the situation. You could adjust in real time because you were real time. In the command post, you were working from radio traffic and sensor feeds and reports that arrive with delay and sometimes with distortion. You are building a picture of a situation from pieces that are always incomplete, You make decisions based on that picture, knowing it is imperfect and knowing that the imperfection is unavoidable, and that waiting for a perfect picture is the same as choosing not to decide, which is itself a decision with consequences. You manage the relationship between your team's capabilities and the decisions made by the incident commander from patrol, who may or may not understand what your team can and cannot do, who may be under pressure from above to resolve a situation quickly when quickly is not the right approach, who looks to you for recommendations and needs those recommendations to be honest, even when honest is not what the pressure in the room wants to hear. You give honest recommendations every time. Your team's safety and mission effectiveness depend on it. So does your integrity, and your integrity is the currency everything else runs on. You develop a communication style in the command post that is precise, calm, and fast, not rushed, never rushed, because rushed communication creates errors that cascade through an operation and cannot be taken back. But fast, because information has a shelf life in a dynamic situation, and information that arrives after the window it was relevant to is closed, is just noise. You filter, you prioritize, you push what needs to go down to your team leaders, and you pull what needs to come up from them. You are the nervous system of the operation, and you function accordingly. The decisions made at the tactical commander level sometimes involve the hardest questions in law enforcement. When does the risk to team members justify a different approach? When does the timeline of a situation require action that carries more risk than a continued containment? When is a negotiated resolution no longer viable, and what changes when that determination is made? These decisions do not have clean answers. They involve judgment built from years of experience, consultation with the best information available, and the willingness to be accountable for the outcome regardless of whether it goes the way you judged it would. Accountability is not punishment. Accountability is ownership. You own every decision you make from this chair. When the role of SWAT commander comes to you, the nature of the work shifts again. You are now responsible not just for individual operations, but for the team itself, its readiness, its culture, its standards, its relationship with the department and the community it serves. You make decisions about training programs and equipment and selection criteria and personnel that will determine the quality and character of the team for years. Some of the most important decisions you make in this role will not produce visible results for months or years, and you make them anyway because your job is to think further ahead than the next call-out. The culture of the team is your responsibility in a way that is deeper than policy. Culture is what happens when nobody is formally watching. Culture is what operators default to under pressure, when explicit guidance runs out. Culture is built by what you model, what you reward, what you tolerate, and what you confront. You model the standard you expect. You reward excellence specifically and publicly enough that it is understood and repeatable. You tolerate nothing that erodes the trust and cohesion the team's effectiveness depends on, and you confront it directly when it appears, because problems addressed early are problems managed, and problems ignored are problems compounded. You think about your team in terms of years, not operations. You think about the pipeline of talent coming through selection, and whether the people you are selecting now will be the people who carry this team forward when the current senior operators retire. You think about training cycles and whether the investment you're making in capability today will pay off in outcomes 2 years from now. You think about the community you serve and whether the way your team operates builds the kind of trust that makes the work sustainable or erodes it in ways that will eventually cost more than any individual operation saves. The accountability at this level is complete. When something goes wrong on an operation, it is yours. Not in the sense of blame that ignores the decisions of the people directly involved, but in the sense that the conditions that produce those decisions, the training, the culture, the standards, the leadership, are yours. You shaped them. If they produced a good outcome, that is the system working. If they produced a bad outcome, the system needs examination, and you are the one who examines it and answers for what the examination finds. You attend the funerals of officers. You give speeches that try to hold the truth of who someone was without reducing them to their service, because they were more than their service, even though their service was extraordinary. You sit with families who are trying to understand something that doesn't have a satisfying explanation, and you provide what you can, which is presence and honesty and the acknowledgement that what happened is real, and the loss is real, and the meaning they are looking for is real, even if the words for it are inadequate. You carry those conversations long after they end. You appear before oversight bodies and departmental review boards and explain decisions made in fractions of a second by people who were doing the best they could with what they had. You do this without defensiveness, because defensiveness is a closed position, and the point of oversight is to find things that can be improved, and you believe in that process even when it is uncomfortable, because the discomfort of being held to account is a fraction of the cost of operating without accountability. You answer every question. You provide every document. You welcome the scrutiny that makes the work legitimate. The years accumulate in a way that is visible in your body and less visible but more present in your mind. You carry the operations you have run, the decisions you have made, the people you have lost, and the people you have helped bring home. You carry the specific weight of authority exercised over time and the understanding of what that authority costs and what it is for. You are not finished. There is always more to learn, more to improve, more to prepare for. The work is never done because the threat is never finished, and the standard is never static, and the team's readiness is always one training cycle, one personnel change, one equipment decision away from being better or worse than it is today. You brief the next generation of team leaders. You watch them absorb what you give them, and you recognize in their eyes the same hunger and uncertainty and determination you brought to rooms like this decades ago. And something in you that you cannot fully name responds to it. You tell them the things you needed to hear when you were where they are. You tell them that the job is harder than the selection, and the selection is harder than anything before it. You tell them that the days that test everything they've built are also the days that show them what they've actually built, and that those days are coming, and preparation is the only honest response to that fact. You tell them that the rank doesn't change what the job is. The job is to go toward the thing everyone else is running from, to make decisions with incomplete information in fractions of a second, to bring your people home, and to do all of it in a way that you can account for fully and honestly to anyone who asks. The rank changes the scope. It changes the weight. It changes the view. But it doesn't change what you owe to the work. You started at the bottom. You are at the top now, and the bottom is still visible from here, still recognizable, still the foundation that everything above it rests on. You haven't left it behind. You carry it. Every operator you ever were lives in the one you are now, and the one you are now is only possible because of all of them. That is not sentiment. That is structure. That is how this works. And it is enough. It has always been enough.